The way of life can be free and beautiful. If you have lost the way, greed has poisoned men's souls. It's barricaded the world with hate.
You're listening to the Political People podcast. We bring you interviews and discussions with progressive politicians, candidates, authors, and other political people. Thank you for listening. Oh man, we want that on the podcast right now. We want to. Can you download that?
It's a good question. Number one, I was a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
We just came back from a break on the show.
Oh, we're here now?
Yeah, we're back on now.
Excuse me. Get back.
It's okay. We can cut this and start right over.
Well, yeah, this show keeps going, man.
I forgot.
Ready. You started talking about content there, and I fired up the recording. We're back on.
So in other words, what we just listened to.
Yeah, well, I'll edit that in so that people at home can hear that a little better. As we were coming back from the break, Josie happened to look at her phone, and we got the latest from the New Hampshire campaign trail. And what just happened, Josie?
A young woman voter in New Hampshire asked Biden about the Iowa caucus, and he replied, among other things, "You're a lying, dog-faced pony soldier."
What the hell does that mean?
Now come here and look at my hairy legs.
Oh, man.
And I just have to say that there's so many stories of people either asking Biden to commit to some sort of necessary policy, such as commit to aggressive climate change, or to account for his record, and in which his response is rage. His response is,
calls them a pony
thumping
soldier.
them on their chest with his finger, insulting them. He called someone fat. His response is this rage response, and then he looks around expecting that he's going to get cheered for this, expecting that this makes him, does he think it makes him look strong? Does he think it makes him look presidential?
It worked for the president.
Yeah, it works for the president, and it seems that's what
he doesn't. I don't think he wants to be running. I think that's where that's coming from. He was forced to run. He didn't want to run. I think he was done, and his arm was twisted.
Who forced him to run? I don't think Obama wanted him to run. Obama is not endorsing him.
Who would want to do that at that age with no policy? He's got nothing to run for.
Yeah.
Why would he run? I don't know.
But I don't understand. And it's not just Biden who's responding to people, calling people out and saying, please account for this thing you did, because it impacted my community, or it's impacting my kids' futures. Please tell me, will you commit to this to what needs to be done? Or will you tell me why you did this before and tell me that you're going to do it differently in the future if you're president? And we have people like Biden, we have people like Buttigieg, and even Klobuchar, in terms of what happened, what came out with what she did what happened while she was prosecutor in her own state. In which we're not getting good responses, and we're getting this indignance and sometimes even enraged that they're even being
Why
asked
would you bring up my past and who I used to be? I'm not that person. Well, the reality of it is, you're right. They are still that person. The only thing that changes in life is you get older. And you're 100% right. This stuff should come out. We should be talking about that. And, of course, we're talking about what just happened with Biden, with Joe. Stick a fork in him. He's done. The words that are coming out of his mouth are not the kind of words that we need to even hear. This is not what the Democratic Party is supposed to be about.
Yeah. But what I'm really tired of is not just that they won't answer these questions, but, everyone up there has made votes or done things that they wish they'd done differently. Bernie has a few. Okay, if you made a mistake in the past, not just as a candidate, but in your day-to-day life, you make a mistake, you need to apologize for it, and then you need to fix it.
Oh yeah. And
Okay?
come clean
And
for
if
doing
they're
it.
and if
Don't
they're
act
not
like you
doing
didn't
that,
do it.
okay?
Don't act like you didn't do it.
Okay.
If you screwed up, the easiest way to get out of it is, hey, I fucked up.
Yeah, and I apologize.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
fucked up, and
And then fix it.
I'm not going to do that again.
Let's fix it. So, you know, I mean,
Nobody wants-
Joe Biden wrote the 1994 crime bill that decimated lower income black communities, okay?
They don't want to look
So-
back on their history and admit that.
Okay, but is he?
He's
but
also-
if,
he also
but,
helped
but
out.
he, but he has and he has kind of said, okay, that wasn't great. Okay, but what I want to hear is, as president, here's what I'm going to do to make it better. I'm going to legalize marijuana. We're going to expunge these records. We're going to not only get them out of jail, but we're going to make sure we support them so that they can get back into their communities and get their lives back on track. That's how you fix things. That's how you fix a mistake you made. But no, he's not doing that.
Well, that's why we like Bernie, because he's honest and truthful, and then when he has done something, he gives you a reasonable explanation. I mean, that's why we're not in those camps.
So that is our divergence, but we still have a guest here.
We do.
We want to talk to him, and we want to ask him lots of questions about election law. This may not be the sexiest topic out there, people, but it is a necessary topic, and it will be sexy come convention time, because if rules change, these are the things that get a president elected.
Sexy is winning.
Yeah, sexy is winning, knowing these rules, knowing how we make sure they work in favor of the people. That's really damn sexy, I gotta say.
Well, yeah, I'll go with that. You know,
And now, here you go, Chris. Tell us how to be sexy and win. Nice segue to dump it on you there.
let me back up here in my chair. Go ahead, Chris.
What's the next logical...
Nothing. I was just giving you a signal to move the camera so you get Chris in the picture.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not...
It's been all on
He's
me,
in there.
which I
Is he? Okay.
appreciate. You
Oh,
know.
I'm not using video anyway for this. This is just...
Oh, I thought you were using some
no.
video.
I'm not going to...
We're not going to do video,
Well,
huh?
maybe we will soon. But
Gosh, this
maybe
way I
we
don't
won't.
have to wear a jacket and tie
I know.
anymore.
I'm like, why have I been putting on makeup?
Exactly.
If I render...
I ain't here to make boyfriends.
When I render audio that lasts 20, 30 minutes, an hour, I can do it in a minute or two. If I have to render video, it takes hours to process it. So we're doing
Okay.
podcasts.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
You're up, Chris. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, the important thing that I want to convey to the delegate candidates is that this is work. You have, by applying to be a delegate, you've applied for a job, and you should know the job description before you apply for it. You already know what the compensation is going to be. It's not going to be anything, and it's going to cost you a bundle of money. But the job description is important, so you need to get the copy of the call to convention from the Democratic National Committee. You need to get a copy of the Ohio Democratic Party's delegate selection process.
We'll have links at the podcast so that you can go there.
Yes. There are other documents that are even harder to find but are quite important. There is a document that describes what the temporary rules of the convention are, and that can be obtained from, probably can't get it from the Democratic National Committee's site because they're not real enthusiastic about spreading those rules around. But there are,
If they don't know,
there
because then we'll
are
know if they
some-
change them.
are some pirate sites that have actually got copies of those that have put them online. So take the search engine of your choice to get the temporary rules for the Democratic National Convention 2020. For those who have an interest in being long-term participants in the revolution, it is useful to get acquainted with the Constitution of the Ohio Democratic Party that includes the mechanics of the day-to-day operation of the party, and talks about, explains how the members of the State Central Committee are elected by the people and then immediately assign their authority to the state chair and whoever are friends of the state chair. So that is available at ohiodems.org, along with the delegate selection process, which is a separate document. So if you have an interest in participating in Ohio, in taking back the Democratic Party on a continuing basis, you should get a copy of that Constitution, as well as the delegate selection process document. And as we had mentioned earlier, the fundamental first step in that will be in the Democratic primary in the governor year in 2022, when the members of the State Central Committee are elected, one man and one woman from each state Senate district. So 33 men and 33 women. And of course those districts will look different in 2022 than they do now, because there will be a reapportionment after the 2020 census. So
They'll have it done that quick?
Yes.
Within 2 years?
yes, they can do it in a day if they want to.
They can't count Iowa in a day.
Well, we don't want to go back to Iowa. We're in Ohio now.
I know, but I'm just saying.
To go back to the preparation for the convention, there are the 3 standing committees that have very serious responsibilities, and as delegates you will be selecting members of the standing committees, of the 3 different standing committees, to represent your state. The platform committee does have responsibility for holding hearings at different locations around the country to create the substance of the platform, to create a document that sets out what the policies and intentions and goals of the Democratic Party nationally are. And
Can I ask a question here in the
Yes.
middle of that point here? So, the platform committee is going to be made up of members of different people representing all the candidates, right? For the
Yes.
most part, I mean,
Yes.
because they're bringing their policies to that platform, aren't they? I mean, is that platform going to have Medicare for all on it? Is that platform?
as we saw in 2016, and as we have seen just in the last 2 weeks this year, the platform committee, it's a very large committee. There's a couple hundred, I don't know the number, but there's more than 200 members of the platform committee in total. The national chair, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez, has announced his appointments to each of the 3 standing committees just in the last 2 weeks or so. And in addition to the national chair's nominations, each state selects members to serve on each of those committees. And in Ohio, we get to select 3 men and 3 women to serve on each of those 3 committees. So the platform committee starts work earliest. Probably starts work hopefully in the early part of June, as soon as the last of the delegates are selected. And as I said, they are tasked with having public hearings at different locations around the country, so as to present the appearance of actually taking information from members of the Democratic Party around the country.
You say that
the
like
theater.
you
Well,
say
there's
that
the-
like they're not really taking.
Well, it's theater, Scott. Come on.
Okay.
This is
Yeah,
theater
I'm
for
just-
theater for the masses.
just making
I
that
mean, I
clear.
do have another question about the Democratic platform. Is it at all binding to Democratic elected officials?
No.
Okay. So the Democratic Party platform does it mean, I mean, besides being symbolic, besides being PR, how much impact does it have on actually enacting the policies it says it seeks to act?
Well, you seem to disparage the PR. I mean, the whole intention of having a policy is to inform the public of what your candidate, what your slate of candidates, what policies they intend to try to accomplish, what objectives they try to accomplish, what policies they propose to use to try to accomplish those objectives.
So, if, for instance, the platform were to say that they wanted to that some kind of a Green New Deal needed to be done, and then any Democrats who worked against that or voted against that, like say, I don't know, Joe Manchin, just to name one off the top of my head, would there be any repercussions from the party if anyone, I mean, if the point of the platform is to kind of give this kind of bare minimum of here's what you're getting when you vote D down that ballot. If you just vote D, at bare minimum, you're getting people who will work for this platform. If you have people with that D next to their name who don't work for that platform, is there any sort of internal party ramifications for them?
Internal party ramifications are possible. In the case of an elected member of the United States Congress in the House of Representatives or in the United States Senate, they can vote however they decide they want to vote. If they vote in a way that is contrary to what the national organization of their party wants them to vote, then they get some public declarations by the party organization that you're not acting like a member of this party, as Mitt Romney got when he voted his conscience rather than voted the president's preference.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify
The answer
what,
is-
what the
There's
platform
no
does.
what. Well, you're asking a couple of different questions there. What the platform does is states what the National Democratic Party stands for. There is no mechanism of enforcement for anyone who runs as a Democrat to require them to comply with all of the specifics of that platform.
Okay.
So the answer is no.
Okay. All right. Go on.
But if you take it serious enough, you can vote them out yourself, and they vote against
And I
them
know that
next
this
time.
actually
That's
is.
the
I
ultimate.
mean, I know that you're here to talk about delegates and their responsibilities, but I've wondered about the platform.
Well, I mean, you've got the example of Justin Amash, who was elected as a Republican congressman in Grand Rapids in Michigan, and got sufficiently fed up with the National Party that he resigned from the Republican Party and is now an independent. And in this year's election, there will be a Republican candidate running against him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And Trump will be up there to promote the,
Republicans.
yeah, because he's the bully of the party. Yes.
Well, in the Republican Party, there is a mechanism for enforcing
And he's called the president. Yeah.
alignment, but in the Democratic Party, The Democratic
In
Party
the Democratic
is not quite as aligned. Put it that way.
Yes, they are. The while the Democratic National Committee is required by its own internal rules that it may not take a position as between presidential candidates. There are other organizations that are not formally part of the Democratic National Committee, whose intention is to try to enforce some level of allegiance to what the people who finance the party want to have happen.
That's the
And
teacher.
that is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee.
We call it the D-Trip.
Yeah. And, you know, they're the folks who have announced that any campaign contractors who dare to work for a
Progressives.
candidate who's running against somebody that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has identified as the person that they want, that those contractors are never ever going to get a job from the Democrats ever again. So, you know, that's one one point of pressure that can be applied, but that's not pressure on the individual candidate. Your question was, if I understood it correctly, that if someone gets elected to the United States Congress as a Democrat, are they required to vote in accordance with the Democratic National Platform? And as Pete said, no. They have the legal right to vote. You know, the Constitution predates the founding of parties, and the Constitution says that they're required to vote in a way that represents their, well, no.
Constituents. Yeah.
It just says that they're required to vote. It doesn't really say anything about that. Because they're, but is there another question? I'm sure you must have something
No,
that
so
you want.
we talked
trying
about
to
the
provoke.
the platform.
The
committee.
Platform Committee. And
I'm
the
not trying to
rules-
provoke anything.
The Rules Committee is, of course, the last line of defense of the existing Democratic Party establishment. They set up the rules prior to 2016. They put in the 15% rule because they thought that would keep out fringe candidates, and now this year they find that one of their favorite candidates has been pushed out to the fringe, and if he doesn't get 15% next week in New Hampshire, then we're going to see if that 15% rule stands. Now, there is a provision in the 15% rule, which I don't anticipate will apply formally, but it does provide something of a basis for them to amend it, that says if no candidate gets 15%, if there are enough candidates splitting up the vote that nobody gets 15%, then it goes down to 10%. And it's not going to take a whole lot to convince the Democratic National Committee subcommittee on rules to say, well, what we meant was that if
Our candidate.
if Joe Biden doesn't
If
get
Joe Biden doesn't get 15%, we got to change it.
but to change that to say if only one candidate gets over 15%, then the threshold goes down to 10%.
Do you think Biden is the chosen candidate of them still, or
I
do you think
have
it's
no
Bloomberg
opinion.
now?
I have no opinion.
My opinion is yes. You know, and but now they're seeing that they might have to go with Mayor
If
Pete.
they had their druthers, it would be him. But I think they'll take anyone they can get that isn't Bernie.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell everybody, and I've been saying this for years. Their candidate is sitting in the wings, and she will make an appearance again. I firmly believe that Clinton is still there. I mean, I watched for the last 3 years. Like when I'm up in New York City, Como, when he was inaugurating or cutting the ribbon of a bridge up there for his father, right next to him was Hillary Clinton. Every time I'm in New York, Clinton's standing next to somebody, and that it was involved in her last campaign. And as you notice, she's always out there. She's always has something to say.
So you said this came up last episode. I'm sorry we're getting off topic here
Just
for
a
a
little
second,
bit.
Keith, but
Yeah, just a little bit.
Chris, but you said last episode that the Clintons had purchased the Democratic Party.
Yes, they did.
So why can't Bernie?
It's by the
and-
way, it's in
why can't
Donna
we buy
Brazil's
it?
book.
Why can't we buy it back?
We don't have enough money. But
Well,
nobody does.
one, we don't have the money. Plus, we don't have the people that will work with us. In other words, the
Yeah,
party
but if
party
the
people.
if everybody chips in $17 enough, there's way more. We can come
First
up.
off, Scott, they have to accept the money. The last time around,
When would they not accept millions of dollars?
it depends on who it's from. It really does. I mean, you have to understand that right now there's a party within a party. The Bernie folk, who we are a strong part of this party right now, but we are on the outside. Don't think that we're on the inside. We're not. It's pretty obvious by when we see people running for Congress, the U.S. Senate, who are progressives. They're not getting the funding from the Democratic Party. They're funding people
Somebody's
like
getting
them.
a fundy.
Yeah, I mean, and even when it comes to getting data access that the party has,
Yes.
that it's not given to anyone who is on the ballot. There are a lot of progressive candidates who are challenging incumbents who are having a hard time simply getting data so that they can go out and talk to voters. And so, I mean, it's gross. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's repulsive and it makes me very angry.
So, Chris, what do you want to talk about next?
How
What was
do we get control of this thing
how-
with people?
Well, first off, we have to get Bernie nominated and get him elected, and then all of a sudden we're in a position to change who runs the Democratic Party. We can have somebody other than Tom Perez run it. I mean, in 16, and 17, when I managed a campaign for the DNC chair, I got to see what was behind that curtain. When we went down to Atlanta and to vote for Tom, that's when I met Donna Brazil, who was at the minute the acting chair of the party. Nina Turner introduced me to her, and we do need, if you're going to change this, it has to be by getting Bernie elected first. Then all of a sudden we're in a position to make the changes that need to be changed. Until
So
then,
it doesn't even matter if the platform committee doesn't.
No, it doesn't matter
Medicare
anything.
For all, Bernie can come in and
exactly.
Medicare for all.
And,
If
and,
he
I, and
gets-
I also have to think that there are a lot of elected officials out there who could go either way. There's a lot of pressure on them to follow the party. To toe the party
They'll go
line.
either way. What they're told to do
Yeah.
is what you're
but,
saying.
But
Yeah.
if the winds of change, if it becomes apparent, I think there are a lot who, if the winds of change shift and it's made abundantly clear, I mean, I think it's already abundantly clear that the winds have shifted, but I think a lot of people haven't really felt accepted that,
It's accepted,
But
yeah.
but I think there are a lot of people who are more, when they see that the winds of, and if they don't get on the progressive train, if they don't get on board with this, that they are killing their own political careers. Because I mean, I really do feel that Bernie will get absolutely a plurality of votes, if not a majority of the delegates, and if the party does something like with the Rules Committee to try to stop him from getting the nomination by bringing the superdelegates back in, or messing it all up by changing the 15% rule. If they do that, it will splinter the Democratic Party, and then you'll have Democrats up and down ballots who will just get killed, who will, when they're in
They will
competitive
die on the
districts,
vine.
They
Yes.
will die.
Yes.
And so, I mean, they've got to know that when it comes to that, they're not in a high enough position of power in which they will be safe, or they're not in a blue enough district in which they will be safe.
the closer we get to the convention, we will have a special show. Mm-hmm. And that show will talk about a lot of different things that are going to happen both inside the convention and also outside the convention.
But I mean, I would have to think that right now, that if the Bernie campaign is smart, and I think it is smart, that they are right now having ongoing conversations with people who, who could easily come to our side. You know, it is my prediction.
I'm sure they already have. I think that there have been talks, you know, before this all started. That's why I'm saying to everybody out there that we need to be friendly to the other delegations, the other people that are supporting Joe, supporting anybody, Pete, you know, no matter who it is. All of these people are going to have to get on the same ship. No matter who the candidate is.
So that being said, I'm going to make a prediction, and we'll see if I'm right. But I predict that shortly before the California primary, Barbara Lee is going to endorse Bernie. And I think she's already decided it. I think she's probably already informed the Bernie campaign, but they're waiting for that endorsement to have the most impact in California.
Well, Joe Rogan's already
nice
endorsed Bernie, so we know that that's okay.
It'd be nice if she did it 3 or 4 days before the South Carolina primary.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, that primary is going to be an interesting primary. I think of all the primaries, that's the one that everybody's going to watch. You know,
Because they really think that's the one that Joe's gonna.
exactly, and I believe
save
that
Joe, and I don't think it is.
I think it's a stick, you know, stick a fork in Joe moment. I think that that'll be the end of his political career. I really do. And then, of course, we're going to have our election on St. Patrick's Day. So I'm telling everybody to get out there and vote, then go party. And we do party hardy in Cleveland.
I'm voting way in advance. I don't do it on election day. In Ohio, you can go in.
I'm voting on the
When
first
does
day.
it start here, by the way?
It starts
19th.
next week. Yeah, next week.
February 19th.
A week from
The
Monday.
last day in Ohio
Tuesday.
to register to vote is the 18th of February, and the first day in which you may actually vote is the following day, the 19th of February.
Boom.
And we should all go vote, you know.
All of us who are voting for Bernie should vote on the 19th.
Yes, we should.
Those who are not yet committed to Bernie should wait until after, at least after the Nevada caucus, and hopefully after Super Tuesday, because some of the candidates that if they're not committed to Bernie, some of the candidates that they might be thinking about voting for won't be there anymore.
That's
so
right.
if you're not voting for Bernie, don't vote until after Super Tuesday, which is a week before 2 weeks before the Ohio vote.
I think it's going to be very exciting the next couple of months.
It's gonna be interesting.
I'm really excited.
So just to go back to the committees. So we talked about the platform committee, and although there are many ways to wield power, the committee's power is more PR than institutional.
It's philosophical.
Oh, that's a nice way to put it.
Isn't that a nice word?
That is a much better way to put
Yes,
it.
philosophical.
So,
The rules committee. The rules
credentials
committee is where the power is.
The rules committee is where the power is. What kind of is there anyone that you would definitely like to see on that rules committee, and is there anyone you definitely want to make sure, or anyone who would definitely need to really be keeping an eye out to keep off of that committee?
Here
Is
in
it
Ohio.
possible to do that?
Well, I think if there's public uproar about something, right now I think the Democratic Party is very sensitive to how they are perceived. I think the people at the top of the Democratic Party are aware that if they are perceived to be rigging the election, that will deflate voter turnout come November. I think they're smart enough to know that. I'm not sure. Maybe this is just hopeful thinking.
And you're saying this after just what happened in Iowa.
I'm saying it because I think they thought they could pull that off without it being perceived as rigging.
Yeah, only the shadow knows.
Yeah, only the shadow. But and then it didn't. It turned out that Bernie, that all these candidates were prepared for shenanigans and were ready to actually respond to it. But I hope that if we can kind of keep our ears pricked for certain people that if there is widespread opposition to anyone, that perhaps the DNC will be smart enough to say no.
Well, to clarify, the DNC has already made their appointments. The appointments over which the Democrats, the Democratic voting public, and the Democratic delegates in the states, those selections will be made after the delegates are selected,
Okay.
because the delegates are the ones that are going to select the 3 men and 3 women from Ohio that are going to go to each of those 3 different.
And I would hope that
Standing
Chris is
committee.
one of the people
does
that we
every
look
state
at.
get 6?
You know,
No,
Okay.
no, I'm hoping that Chris is one of those people we're looking at.
Yeah. I think so
You know,
too.
I feel that he's of everybody that is involved with the Bernie Sanders movement is probably the most knowledgeable. You know, and so that's my choice. He just happens to be on the show today. I didn't know I was going to make an endorsement, but that's who I'm endorsing for that committee.
the important consideration for the Rules Committee is that it's going to be chaired by Barney Frank. So you need to be experienced enough in procedure to be able to match up to Barney Frank. And there are very few people in this country that are. So, so don't put somebody on that committee just because you need somebody to
Showmanship.
balance something else. You need to have somebody who is an experienced.
Lightweights need not apply, is what Chris is trying to say. You either have the knowledge to do this, or you shouldn't be there. And unfortunately, an awful lot of these. Let's go back. We were talking about how this is a job. You know, this is business that we have. This is unfinished business for us when we go to this next convention. Whereas the party will tell you that you're there to party, go out and get drunk every night. We have plenty of food, and there might be exotic dancers too somewhere. God only knows, because that does happen at these conventions. But what Chris is saying is that this is a job, and that we need to put the right people in these right positions. This just isn't because you donated X amount of dollars to the Democratic Party at the state level. What we need to do is put qualified people, you know, on these committees. It's that simple. I mean, I can't make it any simpler. And Chris just happens to be on the show today, and like I just said, I'm endorsing Chris for that. And
We have 5 other people we want.
you know, and that's
We need to wait until after the election on the 17th.
and we will have a
Because
short list.
there are some very capable people who are candidates for delegate, and if they're going to be delegates, then that's fine. But if they are lower on the you know, if they don't make the cut for elected delegate, then they're available to be on one of these serious working positions.
We have to make sure that going to this convention, like I said before, and I want to say it again, it's unfinished business for us. We have to get it right this time. And I've said this before in public when I make speeches. You know, this may be our last chance to change this hypocrisy we call a democracy.
It's always better when you rhyme. But no, I agree with you 100%. I think that we are, this is our last chance to turn the ship around before
Before the planet dies.
Yeah, exactly. We have limited time to act. We need to get someone in office who will bring in, as Bernie said, the decade of the Green New Deal. And if we don't get that, I mean, just me personally, it's very bad things for my kids. It's very bad things for your kids, and you have a grandchild now.
First grandchild, Scott.
And you know,
Congratulations.
and you've got grandchildren. I mean, and when we look at what's how it, and we look at just the differences of how it's accelerating year by year right now, and the rate of that acceleration is only going to increase. I mean, I don't even want to think about what it's going to be like 20 years from now when my daughter's 28. And she's going to be at a time of her life when she's going to be wanting to start a family. what is the world going to look like?
So many of our own, people our age, when we were growing up, a lot of them questioned it, back in the 60s and 70s. Should we have children? I mean, even back then, we were looking at what was happening.
But you know what? Back
to the
then,
environment.
you guys were at your generation. That generation was at the beginning of a move. You cleaned up the friggin' Cuyahoga River. You know what I mean? You went from like one of the dirtiest points in America to it actually looked like if people focused on a problem, worked together, you could fix it.
And interesting enough, that was a Republican president who gave us the
EPA?
The EPA, and that was Richard Nixon. And now we have a Republican president who's destroying everything another Republican president started. Of course, he wants to destroy pretty much everything, and that's why this is our last chance. We really do need to get Bernie Sanders elected.
All right, I just want to put in a word for the Credentials Committee, because we
Okay.
haven't talked about
Yeah.
that.
Sorry about that.
I'm
We got
sorry about
we got running off
Because-
here. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Last time around, the Credentials Committee was a sham, and the distinction between the 2016 situation and the 2020 situation is that there very likely will be members of the committee who represent more than 2 presidential candidates. So there will actually be some decision making there. There will probably not, unless we get really lucky, probably not be one candidate that already has a majority and whatever they say goes. The Credentials Committee is the body that makes decisions when delegate selection in an individual state is disputed. And in Iowa, they get 41 delegates. And there's probably at least 2 delegates that should be they haven't been selected yet, but depending on how their state convention works out, one side or the other is not going to get those 2 delegates, and the side that doesn't get them is going to dispute it. So the Credentials Committee is actually going to have to make decisions this time. And it's a high likelihood that other states are going to face that situation, particularly caucus states. Last time around, Nevada and Wyoming both had flagrantly
Questionable.
yeah, there's a soft word. Flagrantly non-compliant activities at their delegate selection, and
So it's not
had it been at all close last time, the Sanders campaign could have had successful challenges to the Wyoming and Nevada delegations,
And the Arizona too. Arizona
and certainly in the Arizona.
Yeah.
Those decisions aren't a flip of the coin. It's whoever brings the best argument to the table to make the decision, basically.
If there is a dispute, if there is a claim by one presidential candidate's campaign that in a caucus situation that the rules that had been approved by the National Democratic Party had not been followed, then that aggrieved candidate makes a complaint, and the Credentials Committee makes a decision as to whether the national rules were followed or not. In the Arizona case that Keith mentions, that was primary, and there was some flagrant manipulation of polling places. And had there been any likelihood that a change of a few delegates would have made a difference, then the Sanders argument probably could have won, and Keith and I would actually have had a chance to vote on something meaningful.
Well, we voted on one thing. It was the Maine debacle.
Yeah.
Up in Maine, but that was a.
But so do not slight the Credentials Committee this time either. So all 3 of the committees are going to be important. The Platform Committee, you're going to have to find somebody who's got some resources to attend that, and it ain't going to be me. But the Rules Committee is going to be the Platform Committee is going to be important because it is the report of the Platform Committee is going to be the proposed philosophy of the Democratic Party that's going to be submitted to the convention and voted on on the first day of the convention. So that's important from a philosophical standpoint. The Rules Committee is going to be critically important to make determinations as to how the people who get a vote on these other things like nominating the president and adopting the platform, how those votes are going to be counted, which votes are going to be counted. And then the Credentials Committee is going to be very likely important as to which delegates get seated at the convention and have the opportunity to vote based on whether their state organizations had complied with the national rules. So those appointments to those standing committees are meaningful. They're not just baubles handed out like they were in 2016 and say, well, you know, you guys worked hard, you get to do this, and thanks a lot, this is your reward. But it's going to be serious business this time.
And other serious business that we haven't talked about today, the state also has a convention. Each state has a convention this year. And one of the things that they'll be voting on is people to be in the Electoral College. It's important that we have people. As a matter of fact, Chris and I voted last time we were down at the convention in 2016, and we voted for the person who was going to be a member of the Electoral College. It's important that this time around, now that we know that that's what happens at the state convention, that we get some of our people elected. Mm-hmm. It's simple, sounds simple, but most people never talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to throw that in, and Chris will add to that.
That happens after the national convention, but each county Democratic Party is going to select representatives to attend the state Democratic Convention. And as Keith described, at that meeting, which will be after the national convention, one of the things that happens there is that there will be a caucus again for each congressional district, and each congressional district will select the person who will be the elector to represent that congressional district's electoral vote. And it is, not inconceivable that that person will be subject to all sorts of influence and enticements to vote however the goodness they want.
Okay, so the people who choose that electoral college delegate, you said, are the county Democratic Party?
Each county Democratic Party selects representatives for that county to attend the state party convention.
Okay.
But they're voted.
And so, and is the county Democrat, and are those people already in office, or do we vote on them?
They get selected at a meeting of the county Democratic Party, and then they.
But they're elected by congressional district.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're talking about two things.
Okay.
What I understand the question to be is that the folks who attend the state convention, they are selected by the county parties.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
The county parties send delegates to the state convention, and in the case of a county like Portage, where we've got 3 different congressional districts, when at the state convention, when it gets around to the point of selecting the electors, then there is one elector to be selected to represent each congressional district. Mm-hmm. So depending on what part of the county your county representative came from, they're going to go to that, whether it's the 16th or the 13th or the 14th congressional district. So it's it could be organized better than it was last time.
Yes, it could. We didn't even know that this was going to happen.
You didn't know.
And neither did they. Well, at least I went down as a delegate. I was because of the fact I was running for office at the time. But yes, I didn't know about it, and you were kind of didn't tell me about it until after the fact,
That's
after we
your
went through
fault.
it. So yes, well, he's my right hand man when it comes to anything legal, and yeah, so I think it's very important that we make sure that, and again, it's positioning yourself in the county party, and at some point, you know, and we'll have another show and we'll have another guest on and we'll talk about how we influence county parties, but that's another show.
I mean, I know we spoke about it. It was at the Organized to Win.
Yes, that was Mayor
Summit.
Elkins who gave that,
who gave
yes.
that speech.
And we'll have Mayor Elkins on the show.
Okay, good. But I mean, I just kind of feel like if I have any, I mean, I would happily run for county committee or any of that if you know. But I don't.
And we're
know.
going to let you, by the way.
Yeah. But if this is something I need to be doing like tomorrow, I need to know. What do I need to do?
And we'll let you know.
Thank you for coming here today and discussing all this with us, Chris. We appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Be fun to have you back after you do that training meeting for the delegates.
I think what we should
Weekend
do...
of March 27th, if you're a delegate or delegate candidate, plan on spending a day learning stuff. You are invited to, if you have a further interest in Ohio election law, you are invited to check the website for the Academy of Continuing Legal Education for our election law program, which the next one is scheduled for July 29th, because we had one just in December. But that website is academyofcle.com. So you are invited to sign up for all sorts of educational opportunities.
And when we have the training for all the delegates, I think we're going to take the podcast on the road. And I think what we're going to do is do an awful lot of interviews that day with different people who are delegates, and we'll turn that into a show also. The more information we can get out, the better. And also, this is history of what we're doing to get our guy elected, Bernie Sanders. Also, the history, this will be one of those that it could be a training video also. Well, you know, I mean, I'm looking at different things that we're going to be doing here in the next few months, and the podcast is going to be that important that it will have a life of its own after we're gone, to train other people on how to organize and how to get things done. It's that simple. Chris, thanks an awful lot for coming on the show. It
You're
was
welcome.
very enjoyable.
Thank you for giving me an occasional opportunity to speak.
And as you noticed, I hardly said a word today.
I think I'm the culprit here.
Yes, you are. And thank God you were, because he's always commenting on the fact that I'm always interrupting him all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I do that to everybody, but that's me.
I met you back in 2016, you know, the last time around for this, and this was the most I've ever heard you talk today. I think maybe 2 or 3 sentences at one time together at max was the most, but it was good information.
What's interesting is that I have 2 of my managers, my campaign managers, in the same room today, both in Scott and Chris. And I have to tell you, it was a real pleasure working with both of them. And the fact that we're still friends today says so much about...
What you can't see at home is the look on Chris's face that doesn't translate over via podcast.
Well, yeah, but Chris does that only because we are close friends. we truly are, and but it's that's one of the other things that I want to say to the people out there, the people that you're working with now on this campaign. These people are going to be the friends for the rest of your lives. Believe it or not, I'm shocked, but you know, I'm still friends with every single person that worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign back in 2016, and I'm glad that so many of you are back. And again, it's the end of the show. Everybody have a good week. We'll see you next weekend.
Hey, if you guys have any questions about any of the things that we talked about today, you can email us at polipplepodcast@gmail.com. And hit us up on our social media and all that.
Just Google political people.
Yep,
and we come up first.
If there's a delegate question, we'll get it to Chris and get an answer for you. Gonna have I think we're going to try to do an episode on location next week, and not quite sure who's going to be on yet, but we'll update you guys midweek. And yeah, I think that's about a wrap. You got anything you want to finish up with, Josie?
No, this was really great. We learned a lot. The only thing that I hope, and maybe this is more of a plea, is for the Democratic Party to please be democratic, small d Democrat, and just let the process play out by the rules that you've established. But
On that note,
no
I
one's
think
listening to me.
I think on that note, it's the perfect time to end the show.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
I still have a dream. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.